grade, and this is my art history final project. Feminism in Art, a history of female illustrators. So the reason that I was initially drawn to illustration and what I think makes it different from other art forms is the way that it's made for the everyday person, as well as its ability to provoke emotion and just its beauty. And realness, and sometimes even ugliness, and just the way that it is really personal to people, and it really shows people's real lives and their actual emotions about things. Unlike oil paintings and sculptures that fill up museums, illustrations are seen in everyday places like magazines, advertisements, and books that everyone sees all the time, so it reaches a greater audience. I like the way that illustration is able to convey a message or a story, but it's in a very simple and straightforward way that a lot of people are able to understand. Let's begin way back in the 1800s with a woman named Mary Hallock Foote. She was one of the first women to gain recognition in the 1800s for being an artist. She was considered one of the best illustrators of her time, male or female. Foote grew up in a Quaker family, and when she was young, she would draw members of her family. Her favorite subject to draw was her sister, Bessie. Her eyes were her great beauty, and I loved to draw her in my favorite tragic roles. She was the Lady of Shalott, Genevieve, Ethel Newcomb, whoever ruled the hour, she said about her. Mary Hallock Foote illustrated works from popular writers, as well as her own Western fictions and short stories. Her designs were on popular magazine covers and in the special holiday editions of well-known authors. Her success inspired other women to enter the field of art illustration. She had a beautiful way of capturing light and shadow, and her illustrations were quite lovely. Next, let's talk about the women's suffrage movement.
We're clearly soldiers in petticoats and dauntless crusaders for women's votes, though we adore men individually.
This was one of the earliest examples of female artists using illustration in the name of suffragists. They wanted to use art as humor to convey messages to other women. This first image shows a woman checking if a politician's hands are clean. This next one says, "Double the power of the home. 2 good votes are better than 1. Lastly, Come to Mother, a cartoon by Nina Allender. This was the beginning of women entering into political and social artwork. A lot of them had no formal illustration training. Often they were humorous cartoons. It was about women talking to other women and appealing to them. Women often felt that their voices did not matter. This was a way for them to communicate through illustration. During this time, there were also anti-suffrage illustrations made. They depict men having to take care of their children and grocery shop. This prompted suffragettes to make illustrations against themselves. Lou Rogers, a feminist cartoonist, once said, "If the cartoon has never appealed to women workers, isn't it because it has never covered a class of interest with direct bearing on them?" Let's talk about the Guerrilla Girls from the 1980s. This was a group of feminist activists who were artists. They wore gorilla masks out in public. Their goal was to focus attention on discrimination in the art world, especially racism and sexism. In the early 1990s came the explosion of feminist zines. This type of art was raw and unfiltered, and often very political. Zines are small, self-published mini-magazines, often part of an underground movement. They feature cartoons and artwork along with articles. Zines usually spread a message from politics to personal, but they can also just be for fun. Zines in the 1990s were closely tied to the feminist punk music movement. They became extremely popular in the 1990s, with the Riot Girl movement and bands like Bikini Kill, who made their own zines. Throughout history, female artists and illustrators have been underrepresented. Today, 60% of art school graduates are female, but only 46% of working artists are female. This means that even though women have just as much or more talent and knowledge as men, they do not get jobs that men are offered. To add to this, a 2012 report showed that in the US, 77.6% of working artists are white, meaning people of color are also not receiving the same opportunities. A website created in 2017 called Women Who Draw was created to combat just this. It is a directory of female illustrators. Here is what their website looks like. It reads, "We decided to create something that would help art directors, designers, and editors gain greater access to women, women of color, and other groups of minority women, so they could never say, 'I'd hire them if only I could find them.'" Here are a few of my favorite illustrators from today. Today, the internet allows artists to run their businesses online and reach even more people. This gives me a lot of hope for the future of female artists.
You're talking to me like a child. Hey, I got news, I'm not a little girl. And no, I won't give you a little twirl. You're talking to me like I'm sad.
Obviously, they're all different styles, but there's a trend of bright colors, female figures, stories, and empowering images for women. When I first started researching this topic, I knew that women were underrepresented throughout history. However, I didn't know to the extent that they still are today. Part of the reason for this is because I look at female artists' work all the time, and they are constantly inspiring me. Hopefully, this is true for other people as well. And soon, female illustrators will get the recognition they deserve. I hope.